وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ فَهَلْ مِن مُّدَّكِرٍ أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Dear viewers, you are welcome to another interesting episode of our program, your program, Quran Made Easy, reaching you from MTA Africa. Today, we are going to be discussing another very important topic, which is how to take a pause and how to resume recitation. Al-Waqfu wal-Ibtida. Al-Waqfu means taking a pause during the course of recitation. As you are all aware, you may not have that breath to finish a verse at a time. So you may need to take a pause at the middle of that verse and you resume your recitation. So what are the rules guiding this? So where can you take a pause and how can you resume your recitation? The essence of this topic is because the Quran is meant to be recited in a thoughtful manner, because that was the commandment given by Allah the Almighty to the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Surah Al-Muzammil, where Allah the Almighty told him, "A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, bismillahir rahmanir rahim, wa rattilil Qur'ana tartila." You recite the Quran in a thoughtful manner. So that means whatever you recite must be reflective of the meaning of that passage. The Quranic spirit should not be killed in your recitation. So you have to maintain that. The pace, where you pause, how you resume your recitation should not distort the meaning of the Quran. And that is why it is very important to understand this topic. Also, Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib is quoted to have said, what is meant by tajweed is tajweed al-huruf. That is, you give every letter its due right, wa ma'rifatul wuquf, and you know where to pause. You know how to stop in the course of your recitation. That means you don't just stop anywhere and you don't just resume your recitation from anywhere. Now, scholars have categorized taking a pause in the Quran into three categories. That is al-wuquf, pausing, stopping in the course of recitation, has been categorized by some scholars into three. The first one is what they refer to as al-waqfu at-tam, a complete or a perfect pause, a perfect stop. And defining this, they say your pause will be perfect when you are stopping at a portion that is meaningful and you can resume your recitation from the next word. That means if there are 5 words that you have recited, or there are 5 words in a chapter, in a verse of the Quran, then you are taking a pause on the 4th word. That 4th word that you're stopping at must be reasonable, and you must be able to resume your recitation from the 5th word. So when you have this, then your waqf, your stop is waqfun tam, is a perfect one. Now, give an example of this. They have cited some verses, like the beginning of Surah Al-Baqarah, where Allah the Almighty says, وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. Prior to that, Allah was listing the characteristics of those who are muttaqun, who are pious. Now Allah says, وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُتَّقُونَ وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. And these are those who will be successful. These are those who are successful. Now they say you can stop here. When you take a pause here, it makes sense because Allah has described who are the muttaqun. Who are the muttaqun? They will have this characteristic, they will have this, they will have this, they will have this. The Allah now says, وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. That is, they will be successful. So when you take a pause here, it makes sense because that thought has been thoroughly conveyed. وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. So this will be the successful people. So that means it's as if that part has been concluded. Now we want to start talking about the disbelievers now. So innal ladhina kafaru sawa'un alayhim. So when you now start talking about the disbelievers and you resume recitation from this verse, then it will make sense. So your pause makes sense, then your starting also makes sense. So this is what is referred to as al-waqfu tam. So it is a perfect, it is a complete pause that makes sense. So where you pause must make sense, and you must be able to resume your recitation from the next word. So that's al-waqf tam. The second category of al-waqf, according to some scholars, is al-waqf al-hasan. A pause that is good, that is deemed good, not perfect now, but it is good. And how do they define this? Al-waqf al-hasan means you are taking a pause on a particular word that will make the recitation to make sense. It will convey a meaning. But you cannot resume your recitation from the next word because that next word is somehow attached to the previous word. So the word you are pausing on has some kind of relationship with the next word in such a way that if you are to resume your recitation from the next word, then you may be breaking the meaning. An example of this is the beginning of Surah Al-Fatiha. Allah the Almighty says, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. So if you now pause on Alhamdulillah, all praise belongs to Allah. It makes sense. You have conveyed a meaning. But can you now continue from Rabbil Alameen? No. The reason is because Rabbil Alameen, Rabb, is an adjective describing Allah. And you are pausing on Allah. So you will be breaking the meaning. So you have to recite as Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. So all praise belongs to Allah. Then Rabbil Alameen, the Lord of all the worlds. So that will make it that will make more sense than you breaking at Allah, Alhamdulillah, all praise belongs to Allah. Then you now bring something that is an adjective of Allah, and you now resume your recitation from that. So that is al-waqf al-hasan, because you can stop on Allah, but if you have to stop on Allah, then you have to go back. So any verse of the Quran that you recite in such a manner, then you are applying al-waqf al-hasan. That is, you are pausing when you can pause, but you have to go back. You read some words, then you now join it with the next. So you cannot start from where you have stopped. That is al-waqf al-hasan. The third category is what is known as al-waqf al-qabih, a bad pause. It is not allowed. And that is if where you are pausing does not make sense. You cannot pause there. You cannot pause there. Neither can you resume recitation from the next word. So in such a case, that kind of pause, al-waqf, is not allowed. Another thing you have to understand is this. When you pause where you are not supposed to pause, you will be distorting the meaning of the Quran. Mirza Tahir Ahmad rahimahullah recited this verse of the Quran in Surah Yusuf. وَلَقَدْ هَمَّتْ بِهِ وَهَمَّ بِهَا لَوْلَا أَن رَّأَىٰ بُرْهَانَ رَبِّهِ. And he said, so many scholars, so many people recite as وَلَقَدْ هَمَّتْ بِهِ وَهَمَّ بِهَا لَوْلَا أَن رَّأَىٰ بُرْهَانَ رَبِّهِ. It means وَلَقَدْ هَمَّتْ بِهِ. She, that is talking about the woman in whose house Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam was living, intended to commit that act of fornication, of adultery. That was وَلَقَدْ هَمَّتْ بِهِ. Then if you now stop as وَهَمَّ بِهَا, you now interpret it just like all the other Ahmadi scholars interpret it to mean that Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam also intended to do it. But of course, we know this is against what the Quran has said. This is not the Quran. So the Quran never said that any prophet of God intended to commit adultery. So how do you now recite? You recite it by joining it with Lawla ara burhan Rabbi, The meaning will now be that if not that Allah the Almighty has protected him and has shown him his signs, he also would have fallen. That means the reason why he never intended to do that, to commit that act, was because he was under Allah's protection. So you now recite as وَهَمَّ بِهَا لَوْلَا أَرَّأَى بُرْهَانَ رَبِّهِ. So it will now mean that it was only the woman who had that intention. Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam never had that intention. So that is the meaning. So the only person that had the intention was the woman. So that is the importance of knowing how to pause. Knowing how to pause and knowing how to resume recitation. Now, when we go back to the first few verses of Surah Al-Baqarah, so we can now see examples. Let us recite and see where can we pause and how can we resume the recitation. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alif Lam Mim. ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين. Now, in ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه, when you check in the Quran, you will see two signs, like 3 dots. There is one after la raib, the word raib. Then you will see the second one, like 3 dots, like this, after fihi. Whenever you come across such in the Quran, it has a meaning. That is 3 dots, 3 dots. It means you can stop at either of the 2 places, but you cannot stop at both. You can stop at either of them. It means if you stop at the first, you cannot stop at the second. If you stop at the second, you cannot stop at the first. Of course, you may choose not to stop at all. It is not compulsory that you stop at either of them, but it only means that to stop is only permissible at either of them, not at both. So it means you can say, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. Or you can decide to say, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. There are so many examples of this in the Quran. Now, let us look at the meaning. ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ. So this is the book. لَا رَيْبَ, no doubt. So you can say, this is the book, no doubt about it. When you take a pause there, you have conveyed a thought, and it makes sense. Then, continuing from the next one, فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. In it, there is guidance for those who are muttaqun, for those who are pious. You can see that the meaning is still very much intact. So whether you pause at la raib or you pause at fihi, then if you decide to pause at fihi, la raiba fihi, it will mean that this is the book, there is no doubt in it. Hudan lil muttaqin, it is guidance for those who are muttaqun. So whichever way you have chosen to stop, it makes sense. And that is the meaning of these 3 dots. You will always find them twice in that verse. So it cannot be 1. It will be 2. Telling you that if you pause at the first one, you must not pause at the second. So you cannot pause at the 2 at the same time. So let us continue. ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ يؤمنون بالغيب ويقيمون الصلاة. Now, most people will be able to pause at وَيُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةِ. But even if your breath cannot take you to وَيُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةِ and you decide to stop at الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ, those who believe in the unseen, it will still make sense. And you can continue your recitation from وَيُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةِ. So when you pause at al-ghaib, you can continue from وَيُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةِ. Then if you pause at وَيُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةِ, then you can continue from وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. وَالَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِمَا أُنْزِلَ إِلَيْكَ وَمَا أُنْزِلَ مِنْ قَبْلِكَ. So you can pause there. Then you continue from وَبِالْآخِرَةِ هُمْ يُوقِنُونَ. So you can take a pause there, just like we have demonstrated, and you continue from وَبِالْآخِرَةِ هُمْ يُوقِنُونَ. So this is how far we'll be able to take today. Inshallah, we hope to meet you in our next episode. For your questions and inquiries, please send them to africa@mta.tv. africa@mta.tv. Jazakumullahu khairan for watching. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.